watching his city burn. Sorry, kid. Reynardo told the kid. Look, if we give them the book, they'll leave you alone.
My mother died for this book!
I promised her I'd protect you. Oh, damn it. The kid had run off. With the book, of course. So Reynardo had to run after him. Yeah! The two ravens were staring at the kid like he was their dinner, which probably was what was in their tiny brains. Hey, Reynardo said. They cocked their heads at him. Pick on someone as ugly as you. Wait, that didn't come out right.
For the Emperor!
The ravens cawed and rushed at him. Dropship flew overhead. He hoped they hadn't noticed him. The kid. Oh, right. The Gate of Heroes. Someone's idea of a joke, making the Skyship Docks a gated community. You needed a hero's sword to open it. And the kid was on the other side of the gate. Who let you through?
Promise me you'll take the book to the rebels!
Or I'm gonna steal your ship. I'm not taking that damn book anywhere, and neither are you.
Try and stop me, laughed the kid. I bet you don't even have a hero sword.
And with that, the kid hopped away. Had to hand it to the kid. He was an idiot, but he had guts. Where was Reynardo going to get a hero sword? Ore and wind essence? Perfect. A hero sword. QED. This is what he got for settling down and finding people to care about. The kid's mum had been a swell cook, and she'd laughed at Reynardo's jokes, even when he didn't know who'd made one. And then the ravens had come to burn her. And she'd made him promise to protect the kid. But she never told him where the book was. Just the kid. He came up to a ledge. It was too far to jump. There'd been a bridge here before, hadn't there? And there was Peter, giggling at him. "How'd you get across?" he asked the kid. "Where'd you find a hook?" "I hopped," said the kid. White-ass kid. "Hey, look out behind you!" "Cute," said Reynardo. Ah, ravens. It was time to talk some sense into the kid. Just hook his way across the ledge and chase the kid down. Thing was, he hadn't used his hook since he'd retired. Damn it. Maybe if he meditated at that altar there, he'd remember his old skills. It was starting to come back to him. something you never completely forgot, like how to freeze time when attacking. The more he fought, the more he'd probably remember. And there was the Farfarer. She was the fastest ship he'd ever known. She could do the Kestra run in 12 furlongs. Oh, so the salesman had told him. And something told him the kid was about to walk into an ambush.
Stop! He shouted. I'm not giving you the book!
Shouted the kid, and took off.
No! Peter!
But the kid ran for it, and a goggler nailed him with its ivy. The book was unburned. Next to it were the buckles from the kid's shoes, and a kid-sized pile of ashes. Damn it. Why hadn't he lied and told the kid he'd take the book to the rebels? The kid would be alive now. Really pissed off and betrayed, but alive. Oh, damn it. Reynardo picked up the book. He couldn't let the Empire have it now. He was going to have to get it out of there. He'd be a wanted man. Probably have to join the rebellion just to have a place to dock. Well, he'd hated home life anyway. What was the big deal about this book anyway? Maybe he should open it and find out. All that had been years ago. How many? The war was a blur, and now 3 Raven scout ships were chasing him.
Where are you running, rebel?
Cawed the Raven captain over the loudhailer. Reynardo could see them cranking up their catapults.
Just going out for milk?
Reynardo yelled back.
Where can you run?
Laughed the Raven horribly. Far behind him, another city was burning. The dark cloud above its island was thousands of Imperial ships. The fleet was doing a thorough job.
Take us to the rebel base! I will spare your life!
It cawed. The entire jury-rigged rebel fleet was only a few islands to the east. Beyond that were only the pillars of heaven. A sea of endless blood-colored tornadoes. The rebellion was out of time. Unless Reynardo could bring a game-changer. Maybe he could. Reynardo had found out where he could find the pieces of the Sky Ripper, the legendary weapon that had exiled the lost gods. Surely a legendary weapon could win the final battle. On the other hand, his old friend Lapino had sent Reynardo a desperate message saying he had a brilliant scheme to save the rebellion. If Reynardo could only rescue him. Reynardo dived the Farfarer towards the abyss. As he felt the heat of the jet stream, the Raven ships peeled off, not stable enough to follow him down there. Now it was time to choose. Lapino or the Sky Ripper. Every child knew about the Sky Ripper. The Transcendent Emperor had buried its pieces. What could have brought them to light? This Emperor, Isengrim III, had once been kind, but he'd gone mad. And now he was conducting secret, obscene rituals to bring back the lost gods. Had he, somehow, summoned the long-lost components of the legendary weapon out of the deep places of the earth? It was more than Reynardo could fathom. But if he could find a legendary weapon, he would use it. As he set foot on the island, Bernardo could not help but feel a tinge of guilt. He'd left Lapino behind. He hoped the Mad Rabbit had somehow escaped the Ravens. He hoped they hadn't eaten him. If they had, he hoped they hadn't eaten him alive. Why had he chosen the Sky Ripper? Bernardo never made plans that required constant vigilance. He was a hero. He didn't think too much. He just went with his gut and hoped it all worked out. The Sky Ripper was a long shot. He'd have to devote himself to it. No side journeys, no rescuing old friends. That was against his nature. Could he stick with it? In this chest, there were woodcuts of amazingly beautiful vixens wearing no clothes at all. And something more useful. Bernardo hated gogglers, but it freaked him out to cut them. The people who had built this castle, did they even know what monstrous weapon lay hidden within their walls? The Sky Ripper could destroy anything it touched, or so the legend said. As the Transcendent Emperor had fought the Lost Gods, thousands of thousands had died. But Bernardo had been through wars. The only merciful war was a short one. He wasn't that good. Yet. Hero Wall, Hero Sword, Ice Wall, Ice Cube. Renato wondered if he could learn to cook this way. Probably not. Oh, you shouldn't have. These things could really use a hand. Can't we just agree to disagree? Said Renato. No? Renato's blood was up. He just needed to smash something. Firewalls only let you through if they think you're hot enough. Who needed bridges anyway? It was starting to come back to him. Something you never completely forgot. Like how to freeze time when attacking. The more he fought, the more he'd probably remember. There it was. Skyripper's armature. The stuff that dreams are made of. Engineers' dreams, anyway. The device was intricate. No one alive had the skill to make a thing like it. How is it part of a weapon at all? He'd have to ask a scientist. But first, he'd get the second piece. Skyripper had a heart. A core that had come to rest on the next island. Well, there was another island he could reach. Zenobia had just invaded it with her father's Raven battalions. She must be encamped there still. But fighting Zenobia now, that made no sense at all. He'd already sacrificed one friend to get this armature, was it? He didn't need to hurry to face her. She would find him. It was a no-brainer. He'd sacrificed his old friend Lapino to get the armature. And the armature was useless by itself, only a series of coils and wheels. War demanded sacrifices, and he would make more before the end. He would have to choose the greatest good, no matter how much it cost him. Zenobia. Well, he would see her sooner or later, across a battlefield or a sword's point before all this was over. He was sure of that. The power was in the core. Obviously, he had to get the core. Doubt sunk in before he was even out of sight of the Farfarer. Why had he chosen the Skyripper? It was the sort of path he'd always avoided. The path of responsibility, of seriousness. Had he grown up? He didn't feel grown up. He'd made this decision from his gut, like he always did. Somehow, he'd impulsively decided to stop being impulsive. Did that make any sense? He was sort of yanking his own chain, wasn't he? Renato had heard stories of a dungeon where chests were filled with potions and weapons. Fairy tales. I wonder what I could make with all these sword crafting materials, thought Renato. There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time. Come over here. felt ready to take on new power. There were fewer and fewer trees. There were only these huge crystalline growths. Had those been here before? He no longer heard birds except for the feverish cawing of the ravens when they attacked. He couldn't smell the small animals of the forest, the mice and rabbits. Where had they gone? And he was getting hungry too. This was an unhealthy place to be.
Hey, what do ravens say when they die? Never mind. I'll wait.
The 20-sided core made him feel physically sick. Once he had sneaked into a temple of the dark arts, and he hadn't liked what he smelt and saw there. This felt like that. As quick as he could, he wrangled the icosahedron into the armature. The wheels began to spin, then glow. The sick feeling quickly spun away. Now he only felt sad. He had lost good friends for this war apparatus. He carried his prize back to the Farfarer. Now, he had to make his next move. There was a key Imperial outpost on the Nexus. If this really was some sort of superweapon, he could use it to wreak havoc on the enemy. And if it wasn't, well, better to know that before the final battle. But maybe he should show it to some scientists first. There was an observatory on the Nexus. Maybe he should go there before he fired it. Of course, if you've just assembled a weapon out of legend that can exile gods from the world, you'd want to have a scientist or two look at it. And even if they disagreed and he had time, he could ask Calaveras himself. Yes, the observatory would be his objective. Why had the parts of the Sky Ripper only surfaced now, thousands of years after the Transcendent Emperor had dismantled it? The mad Emperor Isengrim had performed terrible, bloodthirsty rituals to invoke the lost gods. Was that why these ancient artifacts were rising out of the ground? How perfect, then, that the Sky Ripper would reappear to be his destruction. What could he craft with the materials he had? Renato had a pretty good idea, actually. Don't look down, he thought. always good to practice your moves, thought Renato. Keeps you limber.
Of all the artisans he was creating employment for, truly, he was a job creator.
Renato checked to make sure his sword was still working. Yep.
Missed his old skills. He welcomed them back like he was at a reunion.
A legendary weapon was exactly what the rebellion needed. They were outnumbered. The once kind emperor had become a tyrant. But his ravens stayed loyal, for he fed them his victims, and the other animals were too frightened to rebel. Renato shuddered at what the Emperor was trying to do. To bring back the lost gods, the Black Harvest, the Black Sun? No. He would stop that toad, no matter what the risk.
Renato had found his game changer. He would ignore all distractions and focus on the Sky Ripper. A crafting bench. Renato wondered what he could make with it. Take a leap of faith, said the inscription. But there were still so many games to play, Renato thought as he died. There was a radiance at the end of a long, dark tunnel. Mother? He thought. Energy spheres. Easy to dodge, but boy, did they sting if you didn't pay attention. Hope it's not broccoli. Come on. One fox, no waiting. Ooh, Renato hated warlocks. The way they stayed back and lobbed pain and death from a distance. Cowards. Really dangerous, effective cowards. He'd once met a pirate captain. He used hooks to get around his ship. Oh, what was his name again? It was definitely easier to fight inanimate objects. Renato was thrilled. The scientists seemed to think he'd put the Sky Ripper together right. But one Toad was worried.
Yeah, the Sky Ripper could tear a hole in existence itself. There are invisible strings that tie the universe together. If the Sky Ripper cut one, the hole would widen and widen until our whole existence fell into it.
Another Toad sighed. Irving still believes in string theory.
At least go see Calaveras.
Yeah, said the worried Toad.
He knows more than anyone else has forgotten about the Transcendent Emperor.
If anyone could tell him how to use this weapon safely, it would be Calaveras. It was he who had told Renato how to find it in the first place. But maybe he had to give up on using it as a weapon. Maybe he had to go to the secret rebel base and ask the generals there what he could do with a weapon that he dared not use. Renato was about to leave when he was stopped by one of the scientist Toads.
There is something else you should know. There are rumors that the Ravens are searching for an ancient artifact on a nearby desert island. There are legends of something called the Iblis Stone, a gem of great and evil power.
Where is this island? Maybe it was the cold. But after a few steps, Renato's optimism started to slump. What if Calaveras couldn't help? Did Renato dare use the Sky Ripper? Oh, he hated that he had chosen this path. It was so much simpler to rescue friends and attack enemies, even if some of those friends were more trouble than his enemies. Some of those enemies had been friends before and might be lovers after. Okay, it wasn't all that much simpler. No. Physics made his brain hurt. That, at least, he was sure of. Everybody knew you shouldn't trust a Raven further than you could throw one. But did vertical drop count? In a swirl of newly remembered knowledge. He needed to focus.
tried to focus on the now. The ravens who seemed everywhere all the time. Where did they hatch from? Were there giant raven hatcheries somewhere, or did they have families? Ooh, he didn't want to think about raven mummies raising their darling raven chicks. Yeah, Calvaris would help. He would make Renato feel better about using the Sky Ripper. And then Renato wouldn't have to worry about ravens ever again. He was practically sure he'd find something useful in one of these things. What were these poles, exactly? Parking meters from the time of the lost gods? A lever? That was new. Most people still use doorknobs. Renato had been focusing all his energies on the Sky Ripper. If Calaveras could not fix it, he'd be out of options. He would have to assault the Imperial fleet empty-handed. Sometimes, at home, he'd wave his sword around for hours. Calaveras had never let him down.
Yeah, of course I can make it work better.
But when Renato explained about the strings, Calaveras grew thoughtful.
Oh, strange, you say? Well, the Arcana do speak of the ties that bind the world.
He drew many intricate symbols in the dirt.
Yeah, so, according to my calculations, each time you fire, I'm afraid there's a 1 in 120 chance you'll destroy the universe.
That's pretty good odds. That's like rolling, what, 21 dice and they all come up 6. What are the odds of that?
What? No! It's more like 2.716s in a row.
Anyway, with those odds, it won't happen if I use it just once.
Yeah, that's not right. Each time you use it... Okay, look, just don't use it ever.
All right, I guess. As he sailed away from the mountains, Renato could see clouds darkening. Rain? No. Ships. Imperial ships, swarming thick as bees. This was it. The big battle. They could not afford to lose this one. What if it did not go well? What if he had to use the Sky Ripper? Could he gamble the universe? On the other hand, what were the odds of rolling 21 sixes in a row? The battle was not going spectacularly well. What had the rebels been thinking? They'd been thinking he would bring the Sky Ripper, or the Iblis Stone, or that he'd sideline Zenobia somehow, or turn her. Couldn't he use the Sky Ripper just once? After all, if chances were 1 in 128, that meant he'd for sure be okay the first time. They'd get worse each time he used it, but the first time would be okay, right? He wasn't sure that it was right. So he didn't fire the Sky Ripper. He just brought it along, in case. The portal was heavily guarded. It must go someplace they really didn't want it to go. There had to be something useful in these things, didn't there? Renato felt new powers, ready to blossom within him, or something.
all.
Someone had told him the odds didn't change just because you'd had a streak of good luck. His gut told him that was wrong, though. And he always listened to his gut. On the other hand, 128 chances to win. But one of them, he'd destroy the universe. That seemed a bit serious. Maybe he could defeat the Emperor without firing the Skyripper. Maybe he could bluff, but with a real weapon. Like in cards, when you had 3 knaves, but you pretended you had a fizbin. That could work.
He felt like Tarzan.
Oh, they really ought to put a railing on this thing, I thought.
He set up the Skyripper and let it warm up. He would bluff if he had to. Zenobia came out, flanked by a very daunting platoon of ravens. You won't actually use that, she said in that annoying, I know everything because I'm a cat and you know nothing because you're just a fox voice she had. Or I know the odds. Good, because there's a real chance you could destroy the universe. No, not the first time I use it. The odds are too low. What? No? Yeah, sure. The first time, the odds are practically nothing. They only go up if I use it a bunch more times. No, but that's not how odds work. Didn't you pay attention in class? Now surrender, or I'll use it. Just once, he said. Don't.
He felt sure the odds were with him. He had to go with his gut. That's what heroes do. Fire, he said. Please? The Skyripper fired. With a tremendous whoosh, the Emperor's flagship went up in flames. It was awesome. Then he noticed there was a hole in the air. A blackness, like a tear in a parchment. Wind was blowing into it, widening it. It grew larger, and even larger. Crates fell upwards into it, and the world itself seemed bent, like the reflection on a curved mirror, as it poured into the ravenous hole. Ah, 1 in 128. What are the odds? Thought Reynardo, and then everything fell into the hole and was gone. Okay, that was weird. He could have sworn he just died. Instead, he was on the Farfarer, sailing away from Ubar. And it was still burning. He'd fled burning Ubar years ago, hadn't he? And now he was back there. Had all those years fighting the Empire been nothing but a vision into the future? A useful vision if it was true. He'd learned something. The core was powerful, but dangerous if used improperly. He'd made bad choices. But now, when the real battle came, he wouldn't make those choices. He wouldn't make the same mistake twice. The book's pages began to flip backwards, towards the beginning. And he realized that his adventure was just beginning. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game-changer. Pieces of the Skyripper had surfaced. Reynardo knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong. But he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Emperor had brought the Skyripper pieces up out of ancient burial by his obscene rituals. Could this be where the Iblis Stone was hidden? Someone better get it before he does, thought Reynardo. On the other hand, his old friend Lepino needed rescuing. Lepino was no game changer, but could Reynardo really leave an old friend to the Ravens? Ah, Lepino. Apparently, the Mad Rabbit had sold a Pegasus that he did not exactly own. Lepino always wiggled out of trouble given time. Lepino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen the winged horse. He'd only sold it. But wait, where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the Ravens? Imagine getting a horse up in one of these things. He would be cursing a blue streak. The Ravens had taken the town. Renato had seen villages emptied like this. All the people taken away to be sacrificed in the Emperor's secret rituals. Renato hoped the people were just hiding. Renato looked around the empty village and reflected. The Sky Ripper had turned out to be far too dangerous to be used. Time to turn to what he knew best. Ooh, what's there? See? With enough leverage, you could go anywhere. Renato felt like he was ready to learn new things. Thank goodness he didn't have to go to school for that. Every day he was getting better and better.
Oh, what does the fox say? Asked one raven. Another one called back, "Go, go, dying!" And they both laughed hysterically.
Ravens were landing everywhere. The advance guard. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lupino first, they'd eat him for breakfast. Or a snack. Ravens weren't picky. If they got hungry, they sometimes forgot to interrogate their prisoners. Even top spies like Lupino. Where had the mad rabbit got to? It wasn't his fault. They looked so breakable.
Kill the rebel! Cawed one raven. Eat the rebel! Cawed another.
Bernardo felt a chill run down his back. Or possibly a flea. Dirty and bloody, Bernardo finally reached Lupino. The rabbit was practicing his shuffle. Bernardo recognized the cards. It was Lupino's favorite deck. Oh, I thought you were in danger. I am. The ravens are coming. Oh, the prison thing. Right, yeah, we see this guard owed me 53 Dutchley for weasels. Now, I got a brilliant plan to kidnap Zenobia.
We capture Zenobia, we find out what she knows, and that's the whole war right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
Capture the Emperor's greatest general, who also happened to be a deadly sorcerer and, oh, his only daughter? That would be worth it. On the other hand, he could still get to the core of the Sky Ripper, even if he couldn't get the whole thing. It must have great power. To make the Sky Ripper, the It's beautiful here, thought Reynardo. He was thrilled to be back with his old war buddy. He'd missed the Mad Rabbit, but something was not quite right.
Reynardo wondered idly if people who had built these poles had really, really long tentacles.
There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time.
Sometimes, Reynardo really hated inanimate objects.
You almost never saw wild gogglers together like this. The toads had to train them not to peck each other to death. So these had to be Imperial gogglers. That meant ravens were up ahead. Reynardo felt wrong all over. He could feel an almost palpable sickness in the air. And if the land could have tumors, they would look like these monstrous crystals. The forest was quieter than it had been. There were insects, but few birds, if you didn't count the ravens. Reynardo smelled sick animals and dying ones, but no healthy ones. And getting a bad feeling about this, Reynardo thought. Maybe Lapina was right. Maybe they should have kidnapped Zenobia instead of coming here.
Where did that go to?
Reynardo felt a little better.
This couldn't be good for global warming.
As he held the radiant icosahedron, Renato felt queasy, like dozens of tiny worms were nibbling his insides. It wasn't healthy to be so close to the eye of a god. How could he use it? He could take it to the observatory. The scientists there could tell him how to harness its ancient power. But honestly, Renato ached to get away from it. He brought the core back with him to the Farfarer. But honestly, Renato ached to be rid of it.
Tell you what, said Lupino. I'll take it to the observatory. You attack the Imperial outpost.
The Imperial outpost was a vital communications node. Taking it could shatter the Empire's ability to coordinate. And it would be full of secret plans and maps and maybe even rebel prisoners. It was a good target for a hero like Renato. But what if Lupino lost the core to the Empire? That could be a good thing, couldn't it? Was Renato ready to take that risk? Maybe it was better if he brought the core to the scientists himself.
Trust me, Renato, you won't regret.
As Lupino vanished into the wilds of the Nexus, Renato vaguely remembered Lupino had a baby daughter, didn't he? And he told her mother he was going out to get some Easter eggs, and he'd never come back. But Renato was relieved not to carry the core anymore. He was already feeling better. And who knows, maybe this time Lupino would get it right. And if Renato could take the outpost, he'd have access to all the Empire's communications in the sector, right? Well, they really needed to redecorate anyway. Once you try it, you're hooked. Renato caught his breath. His joints still hurt, but he couldn't feel the poison in his system anymore. He'd let the armature slip out of his hands to save his friend Lupino. Of course he had to let Lupino take the core. The rebellion needed every man doing his duty. And the rabbit would be no good taking on an Imperial outpost, right?
Hey! Hey, a workbench!
He could try out his new bling. Renato took the outpost with a song in his heart. Soon, he was stuffing his sack with key messages from and to the fleet. Then the Farspeaker Toad chortled a new message. The observatory had been sacked by ravens. Lupino and all the scientists had been taken to the mountains. Why? Why had he trusted Lupino again? And now the Empire had the core. Renato hailed the rebel base to warn them. But their Farspeaker didn't crouch back. Was the base under attack too? Who knew what was going on at the base? But he knew what the Ravens would do to Lupino if Renato didn't rescue him fast. What are old friends for, if not to need rescuing every few days? Renato felt a twinge of doubt. Should he have gone to the base? No. Logically, wherever they'd taken Lapino was probably where they took the core, right? Oh, why couldn't Lapino have just, for once, not got himself captured? Was that too much to ask? He shouldn't be too hard on the rabbit. No, he meant well, and he was insanely brave. You have to admire that. Renato wondered what would happen if he jumped. Would he be rescued by an emergency platform? Where were they holding Lapino anyway? There was no sign of him or the Ravens who'd captured him. Just rocks and snow and the usual scouts. No sign of the core either. Was this a wild rabbit chase? Oh, trust Lapino to screw up even getting captured. But what was this rebellion for anyway? Well, Lapino's a useless goof. But he was a friend. If friends didn't matter anymore, what was the point of winning this war?
You shall not pass!
This chest smelled kind of funky. He hoped he didn't get it in his clothes. Once, He'd found a Superman issue #1 in mint condition in a jar he'd broken. He planned to keep breaking things until he had the whole series. What else could you hook? Renato thought about the intel he'd gathered from the outpost. Who would he bring it to? Who even had time to read it? At the end of the mountain path, Renato came to a clearing. There was a campfire, raven feathers, and... oh, Lupino's lucky deck of cards. Well, that wasn't good. Renato hoped Lupino would not try to cheat his captors at cards. Ravens were much better than weasels at counting, and they had a very poor sense of humor. Then, he saw what he had hoped never to see. Fresh scraps of rabbit fur. Ragged and bloody, ravens would eat anything.
By Grabthar's hammer!
Renato screamed at the sky.
I will avenge you!
The rebels had assembled their fleet. Ahead, the clouds were dark with Imperial ships. If he could reach the Emperor before the rest of the rebels did, maybe he could settle this without too much bloodshed. He set sail, and the Farfarer shot forward. Poor Lupino had never been a great warrior. The Mad Rabbit was good for a lark and a laugh. And a pint. The thought of ravens eating him made Renato furious. The way they were eating up the land. The way the Emperor was eating up the people with his new, bloodthirsty ways. He would make them all pay.
Sharp? Check. Pointy? Check. Flexible? Check. What else do you need in a sword?
Bloodstains out of his tunic. There was an engraving. Maximum capacity, 130 people.
He had given up every objective to save his friend. He had given up the armature, the core, the gem, and even Zenobia. He loved Lupino, he realized. Now the rabbit was gone. A hero looks out for his friends, even when they're gone. He would send Lupino an honor guard of ravens to serve him in the halls of the Valiant. He would avenge him.
He wished there were more pylons he could use the hook on. They really needed to construct additional pylons.
he reached the Emperor's ship. And there was Lapino, surrounded by ravens. He was alive. They'd eaten some other rabbit. "I'll save you!" he shouted with joy and flung himself at the ravens. "Oh, you shouldn't have," said Lapino when the last raven was down. Renato threw his arms around his best friend. "I had to come. I love you, man. You really, really shouldn't have," said Lapino. And Renato felt a rather sharp pain in his back. As he collapsed, Lapino took the dagger out of Renato's back and wiped it off on Renato's sleeve. "Why, you always have to be the hero. Brave Renato, epic Renato, super sexy Renato, and I'm sick of it. But I loved you." "And you thought I was the idiot," said Lapino as Renato died. Renato stared at the book. He was still alive. Again. And still only flying away from burning Ubar. Had he lived that adventure? Or only dreamt it? Had he really died? It felt so real, not like a dream at all. And he'd lost again. Oh, he hated that. But he had made different choices. And he'd lost in a different way. It was the book, wasn't it? Oracles showed you your destiny. But this was showing him different ways he could die miserably. Thanks a bunch, book, he thought. But these were destinies that he did not have to fulfill. But he'd learned another true thing. Lapino was a traitor. Renato had suspected there was something wrong with the mad rabbit. But now he knew there was malice behind his goofiness. But that meant there must be a destiny where he survived and won, right? Otherwise, what was the point? And with that, the book's pages fluttered back once more to the beginning, and the clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong. But he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Emperor had brought the Sky Ripper pieces up out of ancient burial by his obscene rituals. Could this be where the Iblis Stone was hidden? Someone better get it before he does, thought Renato. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion. But could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? The island was windswept desert. No one went there except ostrich. Every child could sing verses about the Sky Ripper, but ancient codices held hints of other things. A stone that ate souls, a ruby that drank blood, a jewel only a righteous man could give away. Were all these things the Iblis Stone? Long hidden in the buried temple, another ancient item that was only resurfacing now, drawn up from the deeps by the Emperor's horrific rituals? Renato distrusted doors that opened automatically, especially after being buried for millennia. Was this some sort of trap?
nice looking eyeballs, called the lead raven. Thank you, I think, said Renato. It never hurt to be polite.
Ravens were already here, cawing in frustration. They were still searching for a way in. Good. Then he hadn't come too late. Renato, smash!
Renato felt ready to become faster, stronger, bolder. If only he could figure out which.
That was always a rush. Renato had once invested in a jewel store, but it lost money because someone kept robbing it. Twist. It was him.
he always wanted to do that. The Ravens, at least, could not get past this point. Obviously, the temple builders knew how to deal with Tomb Raiders. It was a bit windy up here. It was a stone of the purest blackness. It reflected no light, like a void made solid. Nervous, he picked it. It was the stone, eager, thirsty. That seemed tempting and terribly wrong. Zenobia was the Emperor's greatest general and a potent witch. But they had been close once, and Reynardo wasn't sure he really wanted to be Emperor. Why not capture the core of Skyripper instead? It was the eye of a lost god torn out by the transcendent Emperor to power his greatest weapon. "It's the core," said the stone anxiously. Was he listening to a talking rock? Ah, but the rock had a point. If the stone could truly turn him into a powerful warrior, he could defeat the Emperor with the very weapon the wicked old Toad had sought for himself. To be a hero, you had to sacrifice old friends sometimes, especially when they've become enemies. As he placed the impossibly black crystal in his gauntlet, Reynardo had a sudden vision. Charred fields covered in dead ravens below a black sun.
Was it the time of the lost gods before the Transcendent Emperor? Was it the future? Feed his souls, it whispered. Take the power. He could feel the stone's hunger for souls, its thirst for blood. All right, I get it. This was going to be interesting.
Look, it's not personal, but your mother wears army boots. On her ears.
Gogglers.